it's time to work with the 5-thread overlock stitch. So it's actually a 3-thread overlock, and I'm going to do it as a narrow version. So for the 3-thread overlock narrow, I have the standard needle in, but only in the right position. So I'm using my green thread, my upper looper, and my lower looper. So those are all set. But I'm going to take my extra needle and I'm going to put it in one of these front settings. You'll notice that you have an L, a C for centered, and an R for right. And on the foot, you're kind of more in front of your other needles. And so as you go ahead, I'm going to use that little holder once again. Love this. Drop my needle down, flat side to the back. And what I do is I kind of drop that needle down and then bring it straight up. And these screws are probably actually need to be loosened, so you can make sure to get that all the way up to its highest position. And bring that all the way up. There we go. And then I see one screw that's actually a little loose, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten that back down just to make sure they don't wiggle loose. But anytime we use the chain stitch, that's our extra 2 threads, you're going to be using the right needle. Now is when we're going to start to work with this extra looper that's just been hanging out and not in use. It's the one that kind of leans down to the side here. So let's go ahead and thread this needle first, and then we'll go ahead and add the other items. And you know what? Because it's going to be purple, let's go ahead and do purple thread. All right, so purple thread for that needle here. So we'll follow the settings. Oh, I missed the guide here. There we go. Needle threader. Well, you get used to having this right at your fingertips and, well, you just start using it. All right. So the needle, we have 2 needles, 2 loopers. Now we need to get our 3rd looper engaged. So first off, you need the extra spool holder. It's going to be engaged right here on the side. Go ahead and click that in. And just for fun, even though I've got the purple, I'll go ahead and use the orange thread here. We're going to be working a little bit on the back side of the serger. As we've added our extra spool of thread, this is going to be the chain stitch looper thread. So first off, it's going to go up to the top. But remember that extra guide at the top here? We're going to come from the front, you might say, and then towards that guide, because now as we follow that all the way down and to the back, did you know there's a guide on the back of your serger? It's right here. We're going to go ahead and just come in it. It is labeled purple, okay? Then we're going to open up this side door, and there is a purple guide right here. So open that up. And you know what? You won't have to turn your serger around to do this. You'll just be able to kind of feel for it. Because once it comes into this side and we open up the door, I'm going to bring you right to here next so you know how the threading goes. So there is a little picture here to follow as we kind of bring our thread around and to kind of the back side of that looper where we're at. Now, I know this looks confusing, but it's actually not that hard when you're sitting at it just looking at where all the purples go. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to come underneath this white knob. So that's almost like its own little tension. And then we're coming up over the little groove, lay this in here. Come underneath this guide. Everything's open, and we're going to jog back and around and kind of lays it where it needs to go. Then there's a guide right here, which is on the back side of this. So let's go ahead and turn the serger towards us as we get a little bit closer to the front. And then this is where the picture deviates a little bit. One place is done for the chain stitch and one place is done for the cover stitch. So depending on which one you're going for, and I'm doing the chain stitch. So we do need to go down through this little, or it's actually here right now, but the little twirly part. So take this white button and push, and that's going to squeeze and bring everything down and towards us. So we're going to go ahead and put this in for the chain, and I'm going to twirl it so it makes the thread go through it and not actually come wrapping around it in any way, so it kind of guides through. And then we put it through the back side of the looper. There's actually an opening here. You can see it coming out the side we need it to come through. Once again, I'm making sure I don't get hooked under or around anything I shouldn't. I'm going to undo that little catch that it did. There we go. So my thread, everybody's going nice and straight. And then right now, as it comes out the front of that looper, let's see here, I might be able to turn it. Can I turn it now? Yep, I can turn it. So that looper eye is all the way out to my side. And then I'm going to just go through the eye from front to back here. Now remember, we took that little white button and pulled down on it to expose it. So now all we need to do is let it go ahead and flip back forward. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to drop that thread in there and close the door, and watch. When we get back to this side and bring our needles around, this looper has its thread all the way in it. Now the reason I want to get a hold of this looper, sorry, here we go. Okay. We want to actually, just with our scissors, just give it a little bit of a trim. Leave 2 to 3 inches just hanging down. That's actually all we need before we go to start. So I'm going to go ahead and close this all the way up. And once again, I'm going to do that little trick of testing. Now remember, I turned my hand wheel a few times. So I want to make sure that I don't have any of my needle threads down and underneath the throat plate, which I don't. So I'm going to go ahead, but I'm going to go ahead and lower the presser foot, take a few stitches. Let's see here. All my tensions are on normal, so I should be good to go. If I take a few stitches, my stitch length is really short, so we'll lengthen that out and see what it looks like. Oh, fun. My stitch finger was still left in from our last thing, so you'll see it looks really wimpy here. So now what I'm going to do is run it from top to bottom, and I'll show you what a 5-thread seam looks like. I can see my knife was really far in, so I'm going to just move it out while I'm working my way down the seam here. Still needs a little bit of adjustment as I show you here. We still have a little loop showing, so a little bit more out to the edge, and then we can do that little micro thread control too. And see if third time is a charm here. Ooh, yes, almost. Okay. Look, a 5-thread. So what is so great about a 5-thread? So first off, you have your regular overlock. And if we had just used a 4-thread overlock, our seam would have stopped right about here. But look, now we have a much wider seam allowance, and we have a very stable seam. So having that overlock, or as they call it, a chain stitch out here. This is the looper thread that we threaded last. This was the needle thread where we put the purple in, and then of course our regular overlock. But that is a very stable seam, meaning if I had stitched this on knit fabric, it would not stretch. Meaning if I'm sewing this across a shoulder seam, those shoulder seams on something stretchy would not grow over time and become long sleeves. They'd stay nice and stabilized. But a 5-thread does give that professional look. If you look inside of jeans or a lot of your fabric or clothes you wear, you will find a 5-thread seam inside, and this serger does it beautifully.